Yeah. We'll do 3, 2, 1. And welcome back, folks. We're
Welcome
excited
back.
this week. One of Walt's favorites, the True Payroll Crime series we've been doing.
Yes. Loving it,
And
man. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, man. Thank you. I'm good. I'm good. What about you, Rod? You been?
I've been all right, man. I'm actually on PTO tomorrow. Just having to try to recalibrate and get a break in, man. I haven't
Yeah.
taken PTO.
Yeah. It's great. The chaos has been real.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, folks, I hope you guys are good. You're hanging in there. You are in your week.
Yeah.
We got a treat for you. This show is called In the Family.
And the family. True
I love I,
payroll
I love
crime
what
stories.
Walt names the shows, and he's been doing a great job. I love it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Um, yeah, absolutely. This one is tax fraud,
Mhm.
right? Father-son duo, and they've done some damage. Walt has been curating these cases so far, and so what made you pick this one?
Some of the things that people do when it comes to payroll fraud, it could be similar. So I've been
Yep.
trying to find different scenarios where they've done different, a little bit different things.
Okay.
Like, so this one deals with immigration and
It
illegal
is.
immigration. So,
Yeah.
so
This got
something
with some good
different, right?
ones. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
know what
I
I'm saying?
like it.
So
It's fun. Yep.
that's why. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. I get it. All right.
Yeah. So like you said, the payroll crime is a tax fraud situation. They had multiple construction businesses.
Mhm.
It was Raul Solis and his son. It took place in Jacksonville, Florida. Good old Jayville. And the length of the scheme, it ran from 2014 until 2019 years. And the father, he was sentenced to 33 months, and the son was sentenced to 21 months in prison.
And that is convicted. That means they
Yeah,
would convict, right? Sentencing means
yeah,
conviction. Yeah. So I
yeah,
was a little confused. I was like, wait, that means conviction. So,
yeah.
all right, cool. Because some of these cases, they haven't been convicted yet. They were indicted, which means they
Mhm.
found enough proof and they arrested them, but we haven't found convictions yet. So somewhere at that, like somewhere along the line, we'll update these and for the folks who hadn't been convicted yet.
Yeah.
All right, so they're serving their time.
Mhm.
Ooh,
Yes, sir.
total money impact.
Yeah. $22.2 million in unreported payroll earnings and 5.6 million payroll tax loss by the US government.
So let's start with that. Let's start with the breakdown of the money. They did not report 22 million worth of wages, but that means it was basically it's a percentage of tax on that wages that they actually stole. So they basically stole over $5 million
Mhm.
because of their criminal acts.
Yeah.
So let's get into the first criminal act, right? They conspired to pay employees partially off the books in an effort to lower labor costs. They paid employees with a mix of checks and cash.
Uh-huh.
So let's break this down. So basically, there's so much in this one thing that they did. And they really, in one of the articles, they really summed it up so well, right? They like how they hit all these 3 different crimes and they affected folks.
Mhm.
Because they basically defrauded the government, they stole from their vendors, and they hired illegal immigrants all in one fell
Yes.
swoop. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So what they did was they instead of paying somebody $20 an hour, let's say they paid them $15 an hour on the books,
Mhm.
recorded transactions, paperwork documented, wages that are going to be reported and taxes paid on.
Mhm.
But then they took $5 an hour, let's say. I don't know what the number split was. We're just making numbers up. And they gave that to them in cash per hour. Now, some folks may say, oh, well, what's the big deal, Brian? That sounds like a good deal. Folks don't make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. It is a big deal because they're defrauding the government out of the taxes that are mandated, meaning us as tax-paying citizens in America. We pay
Yeah.
taxes on those wages. And then, but here's the other part that a lot of people don't know, right? Is that the employers are required to match Social Security and Medicare taxes, payroll taxes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's a 6.2 It's actually 12.4 for Social Security, but half of that comes from the employee and the other half from the employer. The employers have to match it. And the same with Medicare. There's a 1.45 out of the employee, 1.45 out of the employer. There's some exceptions there for sure. There's some limits. There's limits on Social Security. There's there's limits on Medicare, but there's also a premium on Medicare. That's a separate episode. But right. So, but at the end of the day, if I'm paying somebody $5 of their $20 an hour rate off the books, right, under the table, cash, right, we're not getting the money on those taxes for the employee, and we're not getting the money from the employer to pay the government.
Yep.
IRS don't play, the federal government doesn't play. This is how America works, literally, on this tax money, right? And by not reporting those wages, they don't have to run the calculations on it. So that money gets to stay behind to the tune of $5.6 million over 5 years. That's $1 million a year plus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of money that they were able to keep, but it's stealing from the government, right?
Stealing from the government, yeah.
So that was one way.
That
was one. The second one, they defrauded, and this one I'm curious about. They defrauded their payroll companies, mainly two vendors, their payroll company and their workers' compensation insurer. They defrauded them. This one I'm unsure about, right? Because I'm curious to basically, sorry folks, they defrauded them because they reported less activity than they were actually doing for payroll, so they were paying them less, right? So these this payroll company, whoever they were charging them based on some calculation of activity. But they were kind of like honor system, like, hey, show us your report of your activity, and then they sent them an invoice, or maybe, they took it right from the system that they use. But if they left transactions out of there, right, then boom, they're not gonna get charged on those. So that, and then the workers' comp, they probably underrepresented the head count and stuff like that, because workers' comp, right?
Is that what they did? It said something about them purposely doing that to that extent to lower their rate.
Yeah, that's what it would lower their rate. If I don't have as many employees, because workers' compensation is based on how many employees you have. And then they break it down by category of what are those people doing. And then they assess a risk based on each employee and what they're doing. So for instance, if I sit at a desk in the office, not much risk for my position. But if I operate a crane out on a construction site, very high risk for that employee, and even more so for the ones walking around that crane. Right? Very high risk to be on a construction site. So now if I miss class, or if I just don't report a whole half a crew, I'll pay less on my insurance, on their workers' comp insurance. Has a lot of implications, right? Clearly your partners are not getting the money that they deserve. The workers' comp is not getting paid properly, and that has impact. We'll put a question in here in the notes. What impact does that have really, like, on the workers' comp side? It's a great call out, because the impact is really back to the employee. The employer may be saving money, but heaven forbid something happened and they put in a claim. One, wait a minute, we don't have that many employees here. You're employee number 105. We only got 50 here. So that, that's kind of but it could be as simple as that. Or their wages, like this workers' comp stuff is based on wage rates and things like that. If you're underreporting, then the coverage is not going to be there for them. So it has ripple effect, right?
It reminds me of a situation that I knew of, where a company had a high workers' comp rate because not that they were doing anything shady, but they kept changing payroll providers.
Yes.
Like year after year after year after year. There was one time I think they changed 3 in 1 year.
We'll see
2 or 3 in 1 year. So their workers' comp rate was high. There was even the one point where a company told us, "Oh, we can't do business with you based on this stuff."
And that shouldn't have been the case, because you should keep your rating. If you're just changing vendors, your rating shouldn't change. So it kind of makes me feel like there was another error going on there. You know what I mean? Or they were trying to avoid something, and then they were fine with paying the higher rates. So something shady's going on there, right?
Okay.
But see, that's a red flag, right? And then when we get to the how we solve this stuff, that'll be a good call out. It's like, wait a minute, right? So that was the second thing they did. They defrauded their partners, their companies, their vendors. And then the last one was they knowingly employed illegal immigrants and unauthorized workers. And
and look, you see that little note, right?
some of their work employees had previously been deported.
Yeah. So some of the people that they that they brought back into the fold, they had already been deported before, and I guess they got
So they-
to America. Like God, yeah.
So, and of course that is illegal, and that hurts, that hurts the economy, period, and without getting into politics, I think that it's so tough for that topic, especially among brown and black people, right? It's like, oh, but they need to work, and there's like, yeah, but if you understand how America was built, we can, it's built on immigration, right? When none of us are from here. So it's built on this. Just go through the process of getting in, right? And becoming part of the system, because we need taxes to run the government. Like, that's how America works. Anywho, I don't want to get too far off here, but clearly, right? Because we'll go down that one. I'll put that one on TikTok. I'll make a note. We'll talk about that on TikTok.
Yes. So who knows how deep this runs, right?
Yep.
Like, because that means if you're paying them on their false name, how are they cashing that check? Or do they have direct deposit?
Or you're paying them cash. Or you're paying them cash, which actually they said most of it came from there. So most of that 5 million is because they were paying. Those are the illegal immigrants. You can't do the mix of W-2. Well, you can, but you'd be doubly frauding. You know what I mean? You're doing fraud on book. So those folks, they're just paying off the book straight cash. They're not giving them a check they're not even going through that. And if they are, it's an easy fix in the solve, right? We'll get to that in a second. But they're probably just paying these folks cash. So
cash straight up. Okay.
Yep. Which is avoiding the whole system.
And it's crazy, right? That this stuff like this is still going on. Like,
absolutely.
Even in this digital world that we live in and stuff like that.
Circling back for the last one is just they knowingly employed illegal immigrants, and it's such a tough conversation to have because of how hard it is in the US, right? And all the things that come with it. It's such a tough conversation, but to your point, well, people are still doing it, and it's it is still a problem, symptom of a bigger issue, right? But it's just something that is easily becomes a payroll issue, an HR issue, a labor issue, right? Labor issue for sure, tax dollar issue. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the solves for these, right? So the first one, go ahead. No, my bad. Go ahead. Go.
So I'm interested in these answers because they're really good. I think they're really good.
Thank you.
I'm interested in what you say about the first one here. So go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, of course you set it up. So the first crime was a mixture of paying on the books and off the books to decrease their liability for taxes.
Yeah.
So the solve, and there's probably a few of them, I believe, there should be a cash discrepancy somewhere, right? Where cash is flowing out, because the cash has to come from somewhere, right? If you make $100,000, right, that $100,000 should be reconciled down to the penny. Comes in, it goes out. Now, if at the end of the day you have documentation for 90, but 10 no documentation, and it's gone, there's a cash discrepancy, right? There's something wrong here. The math is not going to tie out. Now, are you going to be able to find this so easily and know, oh, they're pulling off this scheme? Probably not right away. It's going to begin that pull of, oh my gosh, we have to investigate. We're missing $10,000. We're missing $5 million. We're missing $1 million this year. You know what I mean? Over 5 years. So at the end of the year, they're missing $1 million regardless. They don't know where this $1 million is, right? Now, that's the first one. Check the GL to payroll. There will be a pattern, right? There's going to be a pattern of money lost. It's kind of consistent with the cash being lost. So this is another one, and this is where I guess where you got a little bit more curious, the wage rates.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So if we're looking at a job, and a job across the country is going to have different wage ranges. Say that 5 times fast.
Yes.
Right. Your position is going to have different wage rates across the country, different states, different regions, what have you. So there's going to be a consistent wage rate, especially for that state. And if you even can narrow it down to the city, even better. We're going to know within a range what that dollar amount should be for this position and whatever they're doing, their construction company, that whatever they're doing, $25 an hour, let's say, right?
Yeah.
But for some reason, these guys are getting paid $15 an hour. Why is that? Right? If I'm DOL in that government and I'm doing audits, and BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, always looking for reports from companies, you know what I mean? And most companies do it because, hey, the government needs it. We do it as a simple fill out. But what you don't realize is that you're helping that database and that trend. You help establish that trend in your region, in your state. So now they know what this position should be paid within reason. And if you're under that, that's a red flag, right? It's like, well, why is this company, why are they so underpaying their folk, right? Their employees. So it may not raise a red flag initially, but if it's a trend, at some point somebody's going to come asking. What I would love to know with these things is, how do they get caught? And I think they did talk about it. Well, maybe let's get to it. So, but anyway, right? That's just another angle to look at, because again, they are consistently paying a lower wage rate for that position because they're giving some of it under the table.
Yep.
So that's a possible, discovery point there. And I made a note. We drift into compensation a bit because it is the compensation piece of payroll and HR that kind of goes into this, right? And builds these wage weight tables, and a particular job will only be rated out between a certain range. So it's very compensation driven, but that's another possible way to look at it and possibly find it. So let's see what else I would think it could. Search Social Security amounts as well. So my other, right, that was another note. You could possibly find this in the Social Security amounts because of consistent percentage of wages would be lower than others like that in its category. So meaning, if I am a bus driver, right? If I am a bus driver and bus drivers consistently pay, I don't know, $100,000 to Social Security in a year time in this region, but for some reason, this company, their bus drivers are contributing less.
Yeah.
It's a direct correlation to their wages. So it's because they're paying less wages. So again, if somebody's looking like, damn, why does this company keep paying less year over year for 5 years straight? This company is paid less in Social Security wages. Well, what's going on? Right? That could have been a way to catch it. Yeah. So does that cover it? Was that the nuggets you're curious about?
Yeah, because I was interested to see what you said about the Social Security amounts, and that's a great nugget that you dropped there for people. But I don't think a lot of people would put that together. So that's a great nugget for them to say. I just learned. So you just taught me something, man. There you go.
Well, you knew it. You knew it, but it's right. You know it as a payroll person. Social Security has to be paid, right? So it was really fun when I was looking at these problems. I was like, dang, I actually prepped, gave myself a lot of time to prep on this, folks. We've been learning. We've been like, wow, wait, these things need prep time. You really got to think about what the solve is. So I was having fun with that, and I just kind of kept on going back and forth. Like, is there another way? Is there another way? Because again, great case, great examples of fraud, basically, and doing it in different ways. So yeah, it was fun to come up with this. And again, it's just we don't get pushed to think about these things, right? It's like, so all right. The next one, the crime was they defrauded their payroll company and their workers' comp insurer.
So you're saying like this would be the software.
It's kind of, again, with the trending wages, because well, as far as the workers' comp insurance is concerned, they can definitely look at trending wages. Workers' comp, it should definitely have rung a red flag or raised a red flag at the workers' comp, because that's what they're doing. They're literally looking at your stuff and they're trending it. They're analyzing it, comparing it to the markets and the industries, all that stuff. So they definitely someone should have been like, something's off here, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Now again, if the numbers if they were smart enough to do it within ranges, then great. Then maybe not. They could have flown under the radar for a bit. Who knows? Without knowing the actual numbers, who knows? But these are ways. The one I got stuck on was the payroll vendor. It's like, how could if you're a payroll vendor and if you're leaving it, it's kind of like almost shame on the vendor, because like, how did you get defrauded? You know what I mean? What are you using as your calculation to be defrauded?
Maybe it was with the checks. Maybe on the side of the checks that were produced.
But what about direct deposits?
How many illegal aliens would have had?
They wouldn't have.
Deposit. That's what I'm saying. Like maybe from the
I get what you're saying.
Point.
The lack of using the system.
Maybe those checks that they were cut, maybe they were issuing them, like I said earlier, maybe they were issuing them to people whose names were in the system, or they would just give them a check and then deposit it and give them people cash. You never know how, I think in my head, that's just a theory, right? I'm not saying
of course.
Like,
but the solve, right?
Yeah.
If how does a payroll, I don't know, how does the payroll vendor catch that? How do they know? How they find out they're being defrauded, right?
Like, it depends on what information the payroll vendor has. Like, is it an HRIS system?
Right.
Or is it just strictly a payment system?
Right. Right. How are they calculating their fee? Because like the way I think about the way I think about it now is our vendor charges us on the transaction, regardless of I'm sure it's a different fee for live check and one for sake of simplicity, we get charged by transaction, regardless of it's a live check or direct deposit. Yeah. So it's like, if you're a payroll vendor and if you're not using that model, then you kind of you're opening yourself up for getting defrauded. I think, without knowing all the details. So again, it's just a good conversation, because I'm like, what in the hell?
Yeah.
Because it says it in there. They got defrauded because the calculation that they used to charge them was off. Like I'm assuming they left it to them to say, how many checks did you produce? 50, but they really did 150. Like, how are you? You know what I mean? Like, it's a big. I don't know if the problem is with the construction company, is more probably with the payroll vendor, because it's like, again, how are you charging them to leave yourself open for defraud? Now, if the defraud was that I had more payroll and I didn't use you, then of course that's like then they put them in the same category as like withholding the wages from reporting, right? It's almost like, okay, I didn't use you, so that was the crime. I didn't run it through my payroll system, so my payroll vendor missed out on the extra, dollars and cents, fees that yes, that's true.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, it makes way more sense, because I'm like, what? as a payroll vendor, that should be like your first thing. You got to come up with a calculation that captures your client's transactions, without without relying on them telling you what the transaction is. You should just be able to pull a report from the system. Now, if they don't use the system to cut the transaction, then I mean, that's kind of their business. Like, so anywho, it was very interesting, that part. Like, what in the heck? So, but also hard to give a solve for it, because it's how would your payroll vendor know that you're not you're not using them for everything?
They wouldn't.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Mm.
Yeah.
Unless it was an HRIS system that you had a time attendance in it, and you can see the people clocking. Like, it depends on the level of the
Yeah.
product.
It does. Yeah.
Honestly.
There's not enough details in the case to show us that piece,
Mhm.
but the call out is definitely on that calculation piece. Like, if you're depending on your client to tell you what to charge, that is already a bad model, right?
Tell us your thoughts, everyone. What do you
Yeah.
think about that
Yes.
situation?
Absolutely.
You
Please.
know?
Please. Whenever we get stuck on these things, jump in, guys. We're just learning. We're reading it, and like, we're curious. We're like, what in the heck? And we're coming to share. Yeah. Coming to share. It's good conversation, and it definitely opens the door for a lot of solutions. Right. That's what I like about it. It makes us think about solutions that we wouldn't have never thought of. Like, I would have never thought about using the Social Security to back into something. It's just this, right? Because they were defrauding Social Security. I'm like, oh, wait. Boom. So that one was tough. They're again, that second crime was they defrauded their payroll company, and they defrauded their workers' comp company. The workers' comp, you can kind of, again, there's a little bit of something you can find in the trend and the analysis and the data that might raise a red flag and might tell that workers' comp company, hey, I think these folks are underreporting, right?
Yeah.
But the vendor part, without knowing any more, it's a little tough.
It's hard to answer, right? It's hard to answer.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard to
You
answer.
can always speculate and come up with different.
Have fun with the
things.
speculation. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right.
it.
So
the third one's easy though. Well,
yeah,
could be easy. Third one was paying illegal immigrants. And I think that, again, a very clear solve is Social Security number validation. But in this case, it wouldn't work because, the owners were in collusion, right? The owners,
yes,
right? Social Security validation is good for payroll and HR professionals that work for a bigger company, that want to cover their butt and do the job right. In that case, you would find it, because if your company is huge and you got a manager across the country thinking that they're getting away with something slick, or an employee across the country that thinking that they're getting away with something slick by using a fake Social Security number, or one it's somebody else's, then this validation would work. But in this case of this construction company, it was just the father and the son, and they made a decision to do all these crimes. So nobody was going to go check their Social Security validation. It was them.
Yeah, they probably handled all the payroll, anything that was financial.
Well,
they handled it, or oversaw it.
Hold on. You said no, they didn't. The father threw the son under the bus and said that he did I taught him how to do the payroll. I don't know what happened after that. The father threw the son under the bus.
I didn't read that part.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was like a one-liner. The father claimed that the son did all the payroll and he was unaware, or something to that effect. Yep. But it didn't work anyway. They know good and well that the father was like, come on. Like, they know good and well, right? It didn't help them at all. They both went to jail. No, none. That was jacked up, The last one, also, like, and this could be caught, is they're out of compliance. Their new hire paperwork is out of compliance. Clear I-9 violations. So if you're in Department of Immigration, who is actually part of this investigation, Homeland Security, part of this investigation. So that's where these things will come up, because yeah, the owner's not doing the data validation, but these other agencies are, right? They see that, folks are working and people are in, you know, raising red flags by the activity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't hide
Yeah.
the people. You know what I mean? If somebody does an on-site visit, they look at the books and they say they only have 10 employees. There's 100 dudes out here. What are you talking about? 10,
Uh,
right? And they absolutely do on-site visits. I've been in New York. I was visited by DOL on site. You know what I mean? And it's for
yeah.
that reason, right? Because if you claim that your head count is one thing, but if we show up and it's double, oh, hey, paperwork's
Yeah.
not matching. Red flags to keep pulling on more threads. Like, what else are you lying about? Because that's the thing with
Yeah.
auditing and all that. If I find one thing, what else are you lying about? And that's what causes the
Right.
problems, right? If you have
So
nothing to hide, then it's nothing. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's that's perfect. That's a perfect segue for my next question that I was going to ask you. When I read this, I didn't really see a point where they said what happened, what event or what thing happened that caused it all to unravel. Did you read an article with that? Because the two I had on here, I didn't see what caused them to be caught.
Nope. No. And
Uh,
that happens. That's been the consistent theme with these cases. My notes were, though, it's a kind of another case of absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? These folks, they were father and son, they own this business, millions of dollars running through. And, like they said in one of the articles, it was just like, it's an example of being greedy. You know what I mean? And they got greedy. They saw what worked. They said, oh, we could do this. Boom. $5 million later. My guess is, again, Homeland Security was involved. The IRS was involved, right? So they probably caught it from that Social Security. Wait, like, you guys don't
Yeah.
contribute enough. What's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And
For how much work you're doing, for how much all this other stuff, like
yeah, something's
yeah.
not lining up. And Homeland Security, all they had to do is maybe have one person that a person of interest that worked there, and they followed them, and they had and what they say, they were rehiring people that were coming back into the country. Dude, folks come and do checks. If you already got deported, right? I'm looking at. I'm gonna keep right. Those are things that these folks pay attention to, and now you popping back up on the radar. Whoa! So it could have been that. In one of the articles, it says it. Who was involved in the investigation? Homeland Security, IRS, and it was like one or two other agencies. These folks raised all the red flags. So again, no oversight. It was the father-son deal, right? Small company equals big temptation.
Stick on
That's for
that.
sure. That
Stick on
small
that for
company
me.
equals big
Yeah.
temptation because there's no oversight, right? And if it's think about me and you. Me and you is the business right now, right? Things start rolling in. If we decide to make dumb moves, it's just us. Nobody's telling us, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. So small company, big temptation. Big company, small temptations because everybody's in their silo. Everybody's, secured down to their function. They don't have access and permissions and security to do other things. Right? When you own the company, you can do whatever you want. You have access to all of the money. You have access to all of the payments. You have access to all of you have all the power.
Yeah.
And you make mistakes. And they were making unethical moves, and it gets, if you already like that, if you're already criminally minded, you're never going to be able to run a company successfully. You're never going to be able to stay in business successfully because you're going to be too tempted by the temptations. You're going to be too tempted.
It starts with the little things because
Yes.
like they said, they had multiple businesses, right? Had several construction businesses that they ran, and they probably did this across all of them that they ran, right? So they probably did it for one business and it was like, hey, I've been doing this for years. I'm doing it for my second construction business, and my third, and they probably that's probably what got them caught up. They're probably, hey, under the radar with the one, but then all the businesses
you get greedy.
now.
Yep.
Yeah.
They get just, oh, it's working over here, and that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened. I think that not only multiple business, but like a partner business, a colleague.
Yes.
They
Yes.
got like, oh, you should do this too, or somehow they got them all mixed up in it, and that's what
Yeah,
happens. That folks get greedy. In the article
Mhm.
it says it's a great example of greed, and because small business equals the big temptation, and that's why. That's why, man. I'm not surprised at all. We're gonna probably see many more like it. And those are the solves, folks. That is it.
Yeah.
Ooh, another one was this is not a solve, but it's a exercise, right? The money was 22 million unreported wages and 5.6 million in actual. They basically stole 5.6 million. So if you do
Mhm.
the math, right, and you do 6.2 times 22, right, you'll get like it's 1.7 million, I think, and you got to double that though. So you really got to do 22 times 12.4, and then what that number is 22 million times 2.9 for the
Mhm.
Medicare, and what that number is. And there's also, because it doesn't equal enough based on the math I did, but there's also probably federal, local stuff like that that was
Mhm.
also not withheld from the
Mhm.
employee, right?
Mhm.
Because depending on where they are, Jacksonville, Florida, it's federal, so there's no state, right? We
Mhm.
know federal. We know Florida doesn't have any state income tax,
Mhm.
um, but it definitely has federal. So they were defrauding on the 22 million that they did not report. They were defrauding the federal government of their taxes, the Social Security, and the Medicare. And as an employee, I forgot about this part. And as an employee, as a legitimate employee in the U.S., if you had any hopes and aspirations of this money later, I mean, I guess they probably were forced to do this, but you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not
Yeah.
contributing enough to the Social Security and Medicare system, right? You're
Mhm.
getting kind of jerked, you doing
Yeah.
yourself a disservice on that contribution.
Like you
So
said last week, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and
yeah, exactly, exactly
you're
right.
trying.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yep. So interesting stuff, man. Interesting stuff. I had a
Mhm.
great time just trying to figure out what the solves would be. How do you catch this stuff?
Then that's what it's supposed to be about, right? Things that
Yes,
you and I can't figure out. That's why we're building this community with the
for sure.
payroll, and so
Yeah,
we can get those big payroll minds to listen in and tell us what the solve may be, right?
word.
And let us know, like, hey, did you guys think about this? Did you guys think about that? We want to
Yep.
hear from everyone. Anyone listening in, how would you help could all this stuff have been prevented? Do you have any like parting words or anything like that?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we love it. We hope you love it. Keep on coming back, and I hope you're checking us out on YouTube now. Let us know what you think. There will be upgrades, folks. There's a change in signage coming and in branding, and so stay
Yes.
tuned. Which there'll be upgrades in equipment. What's up?
This is a show in between seasons. So
Yeah.
season 5 is coming.
Yes.
Till next time, people.
Yeah. Till the next time, folks. Have a great week. Peace.